Thank you guys for all coming. I'm excited to be here. I'm one of these wandering types, so I may have to steal that back at some point. But I prepared a little bit of a presentation. It's one that I gave in part last year that's really about how to start. Your idea function coming up is, this speaks a lot to that. Anyway, I have a son, actually, I don't know if anyone knows Andrew Roach, that goes here to BYU, and I have one that just graduated out of the business school like last year, and I went to BYU as well as my wife. So we have a real vested interest in the school, and so I'm excited to be here. Let me jump on in. So originally, I was just like you guys. I was sitting in school, kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I assume a lot of you are doing that. How many of you are from the business school or the business side of things? All right. And how many from the engineering side? Okay. And the rest is what? Humanities and things like that? Is that fairly accurate? Yeah? Okay. So I was... Actually, I went undergrad through here, and I was down at Pepperdine working on an MBA, and I had this overwhelming belief that technology and finance were going to converge. Now, mind you, this was back in the very early 90s. This was before the internet really became alive. And my whole premise was to take what Wall Street was providing only to the brokerage firms and try to apply that out to individuals, to empower us to be able to take control of our own financial lives. That was my whole objective. Everything that everyone that worked for the company was focused on. Recognizing that to the degree we could give people better and more information, the more active they became, which for a brokerage firm is a good thing. They were trading a lot. The other advantage we have is that where they were all manual, we were converting everything electronically. So we were executing in milliseconds trades that were routing to the New York and back, and we had probably 99.7 or 8% of the business was with zero human interaction. So it was incredibly efficient. The birth of the internet was really when it became alive for me, when I saw this kind of ubiquitous, universal opportunity to connect the world. And so that became the platform for, you guys don't remember this, but Craig will, the CompuServes and the AOLs and the things that existed before kind of this foundational piece we call the internet today. The only difference was that no one had ever put any money across any of these networks. And when you're trading securities, you're often doing it to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So as you might imagine, when I'd go on like CNBC or CNN or one of these shows, their whole focus was about what happens to money on the internet. Which today you guys don't even think about it. You go to Amazon, you buy stuff, and you move on. Back then, that was a big deal, and that was a big challenge we had to overcome. When I started the business, I probably had the world's simplest, business arrangement. I was married at the time. I had one child, no money, had a good idea, kind of worked it into a business plan. It was actually a strategic plan that they had us do at Pepperdine. I went up and met a guy in San Francisco, showed him what I wanted to do, and he said, this sounds like it's pretty exciting. I'll give you $4,000 a month. At the end of 6 months, if it's not working, we part friends. We shook hands. That was the end of the deal. There's no paperwork. There was no anything else that took place toward the construction of that. And so I literally, as you guys can imagine, not much older or maybe the same age as some of you, went into an office, sat down at a desk with a clean sheet of paper, and go. So imagine what kind of that feeling was like. The business ended up being kind of starting it fortunately for me hit a wave that was just starting to become incredibly popular. The internet itself, finance on the internet, all these things. This company, Lombard, was the company that innovated the first time anyone ever saw an account balance online, a financial transaction online, a stock quote online, a real-time graph online. All these things that are related to financial transactions all started with this company, Lombard. And the company went, thank you, from me and this sheet of paper. At the end of the second month, I had hired about 3 or 4 people. I'd literally create ads. I'd go down to essentially what you call Photoshop today. I'd design an ad, I'd run it in the papers, I'd answer all the calls myself. You know, at first people would say like, doesn't anyone else work there? I keep getting you on the phone. I go, yeah, it's really weird, you know, but it's just me. So I was really excited to get someone else to actually have a different voice than me. But anyway, it was quite a rocket ship. By the end of the second month, the business was profitable. It never looked back. At the end of about 4.5 years, I had close to 1,000 employees, and it was rocking. I mean, it was an absolute startup rocket ship, and everything was about just trying to keep up. And we were processing tens of thousands of trades in real time. I think I had, when I sold the business to Morgan Stanley, a little under 5 years, we had close to $13 billion in customer assets. So you can, it was quite a ride. It was one of the first real high-end, internet-based, certainly finance-oriented transactions that occurred in the early 90s. So I started the business in 92, and I sold the business in 97 to Morgan Stanley. Soon after that, I was asked by Morgan to come back to New York. I was based in San Francisco, and they asked me to come back to New York to join the management committee of Morgan Stanley. So that was one of 8 running all of Morgan. I was in charge of internal acquisition, e-commerce, and marketing for all of Morgan and its properties. So that's Morgan Stanley, the bank, the Discover card you know today, and Dean Witter, the stock brokerage firm. So at the end of before I left, I had something like 14,000 direct reports, which was crazy. So that was kind of one of the experiences of kind of starting a company and writing it out. And I'm going to get into the detail in a minute. But one of the things that's going to happen to you in your lives, and it may be through meeting someone like Craig, and it may be through your professor, or whoever it may be, you're going to meet amazing people in your life. I was incredibly blessed that I got to meet John Mack. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him, but John was the CEO of Morgan Stanley, of Credit Suisse, of a number of companies. Phil Purcell is actually a native Utahn, not Mormon, went to Notre Dame. Phil was the youngest partner at McKinsey ever, and ended up being the guy who was kind of helping Dean Witter with their strategy. They liked him so much they asked him to come be the CEO of the company, and he engineered the merger between Dean Witter and Morgan Stanley back in the days. But what I'm really emphasizing is please, please, please maintain these relationships you make with incredible people. You'll benefit from it the rest of your life, and that means you've got to do some work. You've got to stay connected, find ways, innovate ways to be connected to people that you know are going to matter to you later in your life. After 3 years, I was basically what we call golden handcuffed. In other words, they gave me a lot of money to stay there, and at the end of 3 years, I could do what I want. I was then recruited back into the Valley. John Doerr, you guys, has anyone heard of John Doerr? So you've probably maybe not heard of John, but you may have heard, if you ever go and look up John Doerr's speeches, he's phenomenal. But John is probably the most prolific venture capital investor in the world. He's the guy that started companies financially like Apple, Amazon, Google, keep on going. That's John Doerr. And Kleiner is the company that was kind of at the advent, or the company that essentially John works for, that is the prime investor in all of these entities. eBay's another one. I mean, just keep going. It's all the guys you like. And so they recruited me in to run a company called Elance. Has anyone ever heard of Elance? Elance is still very much a going concern. It's kind of a place where freelancers can find work. So the idea was, if I needed to have a website built, I could do it in the Valley, which might cost me $100,000, or I could post it on Elance, and people from all over the world would bid the project. PhDs from Latvia, from Kiev, from India, all over the place. And often you could get a project done quicker, better, and at sometimes 1/10 to 1/20 the cost. And that's kind of where Elance kind of came into play. So, all right. So I used to keep this sign on my wall, and I still believe in it very much. It's a quote from Julius Caesar: "A tide in the affairs of men, which taken on the foot leads on to fortune." And the real premise of this, of course, is at some point in your life, there's going to be that little flicker, that opportunity. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to get in the game, you've got to be willing to step up and take a risk, because that's what entrepreneurs are. We take risk, and we're not stupid about it. We try to do the best, but at the end of the day, we're taking a risk and we're seizing an opportunity. And I want to encourage you, as you're working on all these projects you're doing, business plan competitions, all these different things you're doing, just recognize that each one of those may actually represent that opportunity that can truly change your life. This was actually, now it's 3 years old, or 2.5, and it's about this concept of perfect timing. I don't need to tell you guys that social things have become very important. And social things, as you know, are not going away, right? It's getting bigger and bigger. The connective tissue of the world is becoming much more intertwined, and that creates huge opportunities for you guys to reinvent this world in which we live. One of the things I wanted to, I'm sorry, I got to stay here. One of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about a little bit is I really hope you start to see yourself as a brand. Does anybody know what I mean by that? So think about this, please.
Well, just like when you think of Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs, you think of their characteristics, like what they're doing. So like when someone thinks of you, they know what you're all about.
Right, so there's one type of branding, which is essentially who the head of a company might be. But there's another type of branding that's specific to you as a person, something each of you can be working on and building today, and that's your followers, right? If you go to Twitter, for example, someone that has, like on Twitter, I have 32,000 followers, right? That is of value to a company, because if I go to work for a company, I can influence a very large network of people towards something the company might be interested in, right? And that concept of value that comes from what you can achieve on LinkedIn, on Google+, on Facebook, right, and on Twitter in particular, those four, that is a value that you carry with you. You may go to work for one company and they hire you because they see you're a legit player in a market, and guess what? You keep working on it. You go to the next company, it goes with you. It's your brand value, and I highly encourage you to start now working on how to build those networks. Don't think of them just as a place to, see a cute picture of your girlfriend or whatever else you might be doing on them. Think of them from the business context that they actually drive. So let's do a little startup one-on-one. I kind of want to just break it down into something really, really basic. And I like this concept right here. Be, know, do. Be is all about developing the type of character, the integrity that's necessary for you to be the kind of person that other people are going to want to be with, right? That's a lot of you have done that through serving missions, through all the service work you do, for example, in the church. You're building that kind of character. People feel that. They see that in you. They can attach to it. Think how many times you've had an opportunity to speak in front of a body of people, which people at other schools often have never done. They walk into a university and they've never talked to anyone more than their family in a public setting. Most of you have been doing it since primary. You have a huge leg up on your communication skills and other things like that. But a lot of that, too, is about building this solid foundation so that you can take risks, so that you can do things that can fundamentally change your life. No is about not being stupid, right? It's about deciding that you want to do something and then really investing the time and effort to understand it. And that's where a lot of the business school type stuff comes into play. But ultimately, your gut instinct, and quite frankly, the people who you introduce the product to are going to tell you more than any business plan ever will. I personally am not a huge business plan person. I shouldn't probably be saying that at a business school, but my reality is you may think you know something, but you don't. You don't know until you get it in the market. And so one of the challenges, and I know some of you are working on lean startup and things like that, I totally believe in the concepts brought forward by that. So a lot of it's knowing who your competitors are, how to build a team, who to ask questions to. You've got all these amazing resources in your professors and other entrepreneurs that you have opportunities to meet. And then lastly is do. You can talk all you want until you actually step up and go. You don't know. You just have to try it. Just get in the market. You don't have to risk the world to do it. You can do it in very small things. In all of my business, I believed in a concept I call fail forward. And the idea is always be pushing hard enough that you're absolutely failing a given part of the time. If you're not trying hard enough. It's like if you were bench pressing a weight, if all you ever do is what you can, you're really not going to get that much stronger. It's the same thing in business. You've got to be able to translate it into something that'll drive you forward. So somebody was actually talking about, like, how do you get going on this? And so let's talk about that a minute. One of the things I think that's really important is to align yourself with like-minded people. There are a lot of people that their whole ambition in life is to go work for Arthur Andersen or for IBM, and those are great careers. Those are not the kind of people who are going to be starting companies with you. Find those people. You meet them at startup meetups. If you go to product pitches where you're seeing people pitch deals or pitch business plan opportunities, you're with like-minded people and you need to associate with them. But I think more importantly, too, you need to associate with people that aren't you. If you're a business guy, find a technical person, right? Find people who have skills that are completely, totally different than yours, but yet people you can live with, because often you're going to be with them more than anyone else you know in your life when you really engage in this process. So there's clubs, there's online communities, you have a class, classes full of people that are interested in these kind of things. So let's break down to an idea. I love this concept. How crazy would it be if? I think that's a perfect lunch, and I highly encourage you guys to find somebody, go to lunch, and start with how crazy would it be if. Let me give you some examples. So think about these things. What if the more people I got to go to a place, the better deal I got? Right? What if there was no such thing as a late fee? Now, you guys probably never used Blockbuster and all that stuff, but it was really annoying until the Netflixes of the world came out. Right? What if I could listen to music wherever I want and just pay a monthly price? In my case, what if I could personally take control of my own investments? Right? All these questions, you can just ask these about concepts and things you're thinking about that truly can change the world. And part of the challenge is find something that's in fact disruptive. You've got to be a little bit, I almost said the word offensive, but you've got to be a little bit aggressive. In other words, you'll see a standing industry, and you've got to take it upon yourself to tear it down, like to change it, to fundamentally alter the way people do things, taking advantage of these new technologies and new opportunities for you to connect and grow and engage with things that the if you will, the old guys just cannot keep up with. Another part, I think, is team. We talked about people, meeting people of different, technical backgrounds, business backgrounds, things like this, but I truly believe most businesses have a really good co-founder, someone to balance against, someone who you get that challenges you, that you're asking all the right questions as you drive through the business. Someone that can inspire, that you can inspire, that can do those kind of things. And like I said, don't hire yourself. There's an old axiom, A leaders build A teams. If you look at the best companies in the world, guess what? They have the best people working for them. It almost never works the other way around. So be super choosy too. Be really picky about the people when you come up with something that starts to work. Be really careful about the people you allow in the party, right? And you've seen Google do that. Has anybody here actually interviewed with Google, gone through the process? It's pretty brutal, right? It's lots of interviews on the phone. They tape it, they record it, they show it to the whole team. You go through multiple cycles. Even at their size, they're still looking at it like, is this person an A player? Favorite technologists with a fanatical work ethic. Everything is becoming technology. That's why I know Professor Dr. Little gets this obviously from his background, but there's nothing you're doing today that's not becoming technical. I don't care if you want a job in marketing. Having technical skills makes you better than the person that doesn't have them. It is becoming that way, so learn technical skills. Take the type of classes taught by Professor Little and others. Learn technical things. Attitude is obviously important, and we talked about B, which is the whole integrity factor. You want people you can rely on, that they can rely on you. So one of the things too, so you come up with a great idea, you're kind of ready to start it out. Well, how do you go from there, right? You've got an idea, so you kind of mock something up, draw it on a poster, do whatever. Go to meetups. Find people who you know are interested in your product and show them what you're doing. There's a lot of people that run around the world thinking they've got this great idea that no one's ever thought of, and they're going to lock it in a closet because it's so top secret that if I show it to anybody, it's going to go away. It's a huge mistake. In fact, if you go to a venture capital firm and you want to pitch a deal and you ask for a non-disclosure agreement, they know you don't know what you're doing. I mean, they know that you're completely inexperienced and don't know what you're doing. So don't worry about things like that. Worry about finding the right kind of people that can really help you refine your idea with thoughts other than your own or your co-founders or your teams, people that are going to tell you what really seems to work and what doesn't work. Sorry, I'm kind of banging through this quickly. This is a slide. You guys some in the business school may have seen something like this from Steve Blank and some others. So the idea is you work on an idea through customer discovery, you kind of format it out, you take it out to the customers, you have them validate, does this work? If it doesn't work, go back and start the idea again. Don't dare move to where you're actually creating the product, financing the product, trying to sell the product until you've actually validated that customers want what you have and they'd be willing to pay for it, right? And sometimes that takes multiple iterations, but be willing to invest in that because that's something all of you can do right now. You spend essentially no money doing this. This is a process of just making sure what you want to spend money on is actually worthy of an investment. All right. So EveryoneSocial is a company we started. Uh-oh. How do I make this go away? Oh, it went away. So this is what happens also in startups. Is anyone familiar with the word pivot? Startups pivot. If you looked at Twitter, Twitter was some like trucking tracking company before they turned into the Twitter we know today. I just read that Sergey Brin's first company was a pizza delivery thing before Google, right? Pivots happen. It's a normal process of business. So you've kind of gone through validation. You get into a market. You may find out it doesn't actually fulfill to the degree you want it to. And that's kind of what we've been through. So we started out as a company named Zaidu, focused on a consumer news site. That's what he was referring to when he said curate.me, Professor Little. Zaidu Curation was where we kind of took that whole content engine that we had built and then allowed businesses to use it for things like newsletters and things like that. So if any of you are like Utah Jazz fans or stuff like that, if you get their newsletters, that's actually coming from us, and we still do that business. But lately we've started a new project that we actually released out into the wild this month called EveryoneSocial. And it's actually about creating a social advocacy platform. And I'll show you kind of what that means in a second. All right. Would you guys like to see what this business is that's coming up? This is a real slide. So this is exactly what we would show if you were working at Adobe, who's looking at the product right now, and a number of companies here that are taking it on as we speak, Dell and some others. And what it's all really about is changing the way marketing works, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if you think about marketing today, in most big companies, they have someone who's running marketing, and they come up with like a blog post or a promotion or something like that, and they put it down their corporate channels, their Facebook page. You see everyone trying to get you to like something, all that stuff. Their Twitter handles, their LinkedIn pages, stuff like that. So it's kind of a one-to-one communication. And what EveryoneSocial is saying is that's kind of an antiquated way to do it, that we can actually value the whole resource of the entire company, turn everyone into the marketing department, from the CEO all the way down to people that work in support. And the idea then is that you can massively expand your market presence, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So Vivint right here is a company that is very actively getting ready to take on our product. Vivint is a company that, if you look down at the bottom, if you look at all their corporate pieces, they have about 324,000 people with whom they can be communicating. By using EveryoneSocial, they increase that number dramatically to over 1.6 million. How are they doing that? They're leveraging the brand value of their employees to do it, right? So that's why I was telling you brand value as an employee is becoming more and more important. So who they look at to hire, how they onboard you as a new employee, all these things starts becoming important, who you are. Not just how you can work, but who you are, what assets you bring to the equation, because they can use that to help drive their business. This is an example of their audience. In their case, just by using our product, if you do what an ROI or return on investment calculation, for them, it would take, so if you can imagine, you see people run ads on Google, right? And they pay X dollars to try to get people to come in and buy their product, right? They buy AdWords. And so for a company like Vivint, they spend lots and lots of money on that. Every single lead essentially coming in from those clicks, in their case, costs $30 to $40. By using our product, they can generate or save by having the system actually generate people back to their site of about $290,000 a month. We charge $20,000 for 6 months. So you can imagine when we go in and we talk to a customer like this, it's not real hard to get them to understand why this is a product that they should put in their business. Does that make any sense? So there's kind of this old way of selling, cold calling, all those things. What's really changing is everything's going social. People are using social tools now to sell. They're scheduling their business meetings via social things. They'll literally be scheduling meetings live on Twitter and on LinkedIn and on places like that. They actually want people, other people, to see meetings being scheduled because it creates interest in why are they having this meeting, right, for competitive and other kinds of businesses. So what we provide is essentially a enterprise class application that allows them to manage an entire company all the way down to the groups. So imagine this, you come in and what the company essentially asks of an employee, we don't want to turn everyone that's an employee into what I call a corporate parrot, like here's our product, promote it through all your friends or whatever. So what we do is we provide our entire back-end engine. So you go in and you put in the things you care about. Korean barbecue, snow skiing, and hopscotch, whatever it might be, right? You put in what you care about, and the system then will go through the internet with we have a massive back end. It'll go through and it'll pull up and it'll instantly stack rank for you of the things you care about. These are the pieces of content that are getting ready to accelerate on the web. So as you start sharing those things that you care about into those channels, guess what? You start building followers, right? And you start becoming really interesting because you're showing the kind of stuff that people actually care about, that they want to read and understand and learn about. And then what the company essentially does is say, for every, say, 10 to 15 of those you do for yourself, include one that might be, hey, like a company up in Park City that does vitamin work, you know, their whole thing is, hey, my company just came out with this new product. If you're interested, here's my employee discount code where you can get it at a discount. That's the kind of message. Not the kind of things like some banner, like some promotion that you're used to. It's something communicating like a human to a human. And what we're really emphasizing with the companies is trying to get them to understand that we want you to not think of yourself as a marketer, but think of yourself like a publisher, like talk to people like you want to be talked to, right? And they can use our tool to do that and then measure everything. So they can actually, for the first time in social media, for all the companies that exist, actually determine a real-world ROI, something they have yet to be able to do on any of the other platforms that exist in the market. So that gives us a huge competitive advantage when we go in to talk to a customer. So manage teams, trending content, because all it is essentially signing onto a web app. There's no installation. We train them on things like how to comment, which hashtags and lots of things like that to use to generate more volume and traffic, and how to use our product in particular. And then we also provide kind of an analytics piece, which is essentially a dashboard. It's kind of fun when things are a little competitive. So we kind of stack rank the company and their employees based on who's performing best and use of the product. They actually build the product into part of their comp plans. So people are getting paid as a result of the activity they're able to generate and do in terms of use for the product. So the left side, the right side is a little bit like your little sign-on app you had going, where it's just live things coming down the feed, different thing the company wants to talk about than who's ranked up and who's doing well. So, all right, so that's that's what I wanted to kind of talk to you about. I'm sorry I've kind of rushed through this because I want to make sure you get to talk to Craig and stuff. So I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm going to turn it over now for questions and things like that. Everything goes. Craig and I will kind of go back and forth. Before I do, though, Craig, do you have any thoughts about some of the things we've talked about or that have been presented?
About 3 times. Is this on?
Flip that. Did you flip that switch?
I did.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me
You
now?
just got to move it closer.
About 3 times I started to jump in there, and you covered everything. So the only thing I would just emphasize is, and I hope you didn't miss it, is we call it lean startup, but it's validating your concept, validating your idea before you go spend any money. So as students, you don't have any money. Everybody knows that. You most of all. Your biggest problem with starting a company is that you don't have any money to start it with. But you are in the exact right place to do the first step that everybody needs to do, and the first step that many never get around to doing, and that is to validate your concept. So,
May I say real quick, Craig?
yeah,
And you're really in the right place, because if you do have money, you'll often jump ahead of where you should be because you can.
yeah, the worst curse in the world is to get money early. And you don't know it. But anyway, so what you should be doing is talking to people. And by the way, your mother and your roommates don't count. Talking to people, I like to say disinterested people. So people who don't know you or don't know anything about your idea, go try to make a convert out of them. Just go back to your missionary days and do that again, but now you got a new cause. If you can begin to feel a warm reception of your idea, then you're on your way. And if you're not, then you need to fine tune it. So it sounds simple, but let me just say it's a step that's been skipped over forever until Steve Blank and others started preaching it, and you're in the right place to be doing that right now. So with that, let's see if what questions Eric's presentation started in your mind, and let's take those.
Go ahead.
Why don't you stand up so we can see you? Yeah, how are you doing?
Seedlink says that the founding team, the CEO, should be doing the validation themselves in order to customers. So I would like to hear what you do so we can have some ideas. How do you validate?
Right. So the question, I'm just going to repeat it so everyone can hear it. So the question is, as a CEO of a company, what do I do to participate in the validation process and kind of the ongoing running of the company as it relates to that? Is that fair? So I think one of the examples I've always loved in business is McDonald's. I don't know if you know, and I don't know if they still do it, but for many years, they've required their entire board of directors to go work in a McDonald's restaurant. And you learn a lot more than sitting in a board meeting when you're sitting behind the counter. And I do the same thing. When I was running the brokerage firm, I would always go work on the trading desk. Even when it got big, I'd always be on the desk. I'd go plug into they have these little Y converters. So you've got a phone with a headset, and there's a connection, and there's one dangling, like for training. I'd plug in, and I'd listen to how are we opening accounts? How are we doing all these things? How are we treating a customer when they trade? In our case, I've always been it's a very good question, but I've always been very focused on the most minute details of dealing with how you treat a customer. I think it's super important. So crazy things like in our business, we would never say hold. We'd always say stay with me. Things like that. It's just these little subtleties that change the way you're perceived. And in our case, Lombard won Best Online with these companies you've heard of today, like E-Trades and Ameritrades and all those guys that emerged. Lombard beat those companies 5 years in a row, and largely because we knew how to treat a customer. And so when they'd go out and they'd survey the customers who they liked, we'd always win. And it was largely because of all those little things that we focused on. And you learn those by not separating yourself. There's an old axiom in business that you can't manage by proxy. You've got to be in the trenches. You have to do that. You see Jobs was super involved in every product coming out the door, and all good CEOs are. Craig, do you have any thoughts on that?
I want to push a little bit. So I teach a class here. I'm not teaching this semester, but I teach CS 405, which is creating software ventures. And one of the activities we do in the class is a survey. So this is something you can do. So if you have any kind of a business idea you're working on, there's two pieces of the validation that you should do. One is customer interviews, so you actually talk to somebody in person, and that's by far the best. But you can't do very many of those. You might be able to do 10 or 20 or 50 if you're really aggressive. So the other way to reach a lot of people is to do surveys, and you live in an age when surveys are easy to do because you got SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics or one of these great tools out there. But you can create a really crappy survey that won't give you anything. So you need to sit down and create a good survey, and the survey needs to entice people into it, so it can't be, you need to sort of trick them to get them to answer the questions so you can get them all the way through your survey first. So you need to put yourself on the other side and figure out what you would like to see. How would you drag information out of, how would somebody drag information out of you? You need to figure that out. But anyway, at some point in the survey you say, what if this, well, wouldn't it be crazy if, let's go back to his question, if this was available, and get the answer to your question, whatever the idea is that you're thinking about. What if that was available, would you pay for it? Okay, so now you have your survey, and it's well designed so that if somebody starts it, you'll actually sucker them into finishing it. And then all you got to do is figure out how to get it out to your first 100 friends and ask them to get it out to their 10 next friends. And you actually want to end up with about 400 responses. 400 or 500 responses is a good number. If you get that, you might be able to get funding just on the basis of a decently done survey with some good results. Some seed funding, like
I would also
10 or
encourage
$20,000 to get you started.
the way the web works today. A lot of you out here can hack up a page really fast. Launch it. There's no such thing as perfect. Never will be. Get it out. Get it in the market.
You mean good enough is good enough?
Good enough is good enough. Is that A.L. Williams? All you can do is enough, and enough is good enough. But yeah. Anyway, you can get things out really quickly, and you can start directing people to check it out and stuff like that. And don't worry, it doesn't have this feature, doesn't have that feature, doesn't have a credit card. Don't worry about it. Get it up and out, at least to a point where you can collect data against it.
So
And that's what I think
when people
Craig
come
was
in to
saying.
talk to me about their idea, when I'm doing my mentoring and I meet with them in 470 here, a lot of students come in and they think they have the greatest idea in the world, and they've done nothing to prove it. And I just do what I just told you. I said, so I have zero interest in your idea because you have nothing besides your enthusiasm. Nothing to validate it. That's a boring. Have you guys watched Shark Tank? What do they always ask? What are your sales? After they go through the idea and the entrepreneur is up there and all excited, what kind of traction do you have? What are your sales? Or how can you prove that anybody cares about this idea? That's what you need.
All right, next question.
Oh, our work here is done.
Sure, go ahead.
Stand up. With EveryoneSocial, I looked at the website and I was wondering what kind of relationships do you have with the companies, like the social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+.
Yeah, so part of our back-end engine where we actually source all the content, we have deals with Google, Yahoo Boss, and Bing. And we have our own, for the technical ones out there, we run a big Hadoop cluster that's processing about 800,000 feeds in real time. And then like Professor Little was talking about Curate.me, we have about 4 million users on that side of the fence. So we kind of merge those two so we can not only see a piece of content that is specific to a category you care about, but we can use that 4 million to know if in fact it's something they're sharing, liking, tweeting, commenting on, what we call social endorsing. And that's part of what we use algorithmically to elevate specific pieces of content. And then with the actual providers, so we have baseline access via their APIs for all of the major social networks. Yeah, we're not, the one we haven't implemented yet is Pinterest, which we'll put on here pretty soon.
Are you looking for more Curate.me users?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
that's
let me
good.
sell you guys. So I'm a Red Sox fan. I grew up in Boston. So when I go on to create my account on Curate.me, I of course checked off entrepreneurship and all that stuff. But the last one I checked off was Red Sox, Boston Red Sox. So when I get the email from Curate.me every day, I don't know why it's the last story every day, the last story on the list every day, but I get one Red Sox story. And
You
guess what?
can, you can actually move where it shows up if you go back in.
It's actually one I care about. It's one that, so if you think about it, there's 1,000 Red Sox stories that day, but this is the one that the most people reposted or retweeted or commented on. So I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I read it, I have confidence that's the only story I really care about, and I read that when I'm done with the Red Sox for the day.
Yeah, if you think about emails you get, which you get a lot,
Yeah.
right? In this case, these emails that come out, typically anywhere from 3 to 4 of the typical 10 pieces of content are read, which is an exceedingly high hit rate for something you're getting every day.
It actually makes me mad because I want to get stuff off my list, but I go through there and there's like 4 out of the 10 stories that I actually want to read, so I can't delete that thing. I got to come back to it when I have more time.
That's good.
Anyway, you should sign up for it. It will save you a lot of time from going to all kinds of other services. Just trust it that it's giving you the stuff you really want to see, the most important.
All right, I think we're about out of time, right?